We are live.
Okay.
We are live. We're going to admit a couple applicants so that they can be sworn in.
Okay, I'd like to call to order. City of Lake Worth Beach Historic Resources Preservation Board meeting, Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Elaine DeRisso. Laura Devlin. Here. Bob Dorenzo.
Here.
Nadine Heights. Here. Ed DeVoe.
Here.
Ed LeBlanc.
Here.
You have a quorum.
All right.
Full house.
Can we do the pledge of allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions, deletions, reordering, approval of agenda.
There is one reordering that we'd like to do. We'd like to switch items C and B. It's just two ordinances.
Okay,
An applicant may be showing up related to ordinance 2024-17. So we'd want to honor their
that's
time and
fine.
get them.
We'll follow your lead.
Perfect.
Okay, approval of the minutes from October 16, 2024, regular meeting minutes.
I approve.
Okay,
I move to approve the minutes. I've submitted.
okay. I got a first, I got a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? We're good. Swearing in of staff and applicants.
Please raise your right hand. And for the applicants via Zoom, if you would just respond with a yes. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes.
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 Yes. Let's see, proof of publication, I don't think we needed any, did we?
No, we did not.
And then withdrawals and postponements,
None.
consent, public hearing, board disclosures, I don't think we have. Nobody, so disclosures, we're good there. No unfinished business, so we could start our meeting.
All right, and just so the applicants know at home and anyone watching on the live stream, unfortunately, our larger screens are not working tonight, so we apologize if you all are unable to see the presentation that's being shared.
There.
Good evening, Ann Hamilton presenting case number 24-00100164 for the consideration of a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a new accessory dwelling unit and one historic waiver to exceed the accessory structure size limitation at 406 North L Street. This property is in the single-family and two-family residential district and has a future land use designation of medium density and is a contributing resource in the Northeast Lucerne Historic District. So as you can see, this is a mid-block property on North L Street, bounded by an alley in the rear and close to the corner, but one property away. Here's the primary structure. It was built in 1946. There was an error in your staff report. We had some information from a historic district survey that indicated it was in 1926, but the original building application does show that it was built in 1946, and that does correspond with the minimal traditional style that it was built in as well. So you can't see it here. It's a one-story structure with single hung windows, siding, a fairly typical minimal traditional structure. To the rear of the property, there is an existing historic garage that's about 335 square feet. And the proposed ADU would be located in the opposite corner from that. We do have a survey of the property and a proposed site plan. which unfortunately you can't see here. It would be a 2-story ADU. It does meet all setbacks. It would have parking beneath the building and 1 bedroom on the ground floor. So I can try and describe some of the elevations to you. It's a 2-story building with siding, a gabled roof, a cantilevered balcony off the front elevation, which would face towards the alley in this case. Ground floor parking, single hung windows, generally in keeping with the style of the existing house. Same on the side elevations. Full light French doors. You can't see it. There's a streetscape elevation of the existing structure and then the proposed behind it. The proposed structure behind it would be somewhat visible from the street, but mainly only a small portion of the 2nd story.
Now that opens onto the parking lot of Sacred Heart?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're saying the alleyway, it's basically the alleyway parking lot.
It really looks more like it is opening onto the parking lot. There is technically, according to the survey, an alley. They do have the back out distance to pull out into there. But it is a very small alley and it really does look like it just backs onto a parking lot. So as far as the floor plan, it's a 2-bedroom unit, 2-story, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom on the ground floor with a utility room. And as I mentioned earlier, the parking. And 1 bedroom in the living room on the 2nd floor. There's a 3D view provided. The applicant is requesting 1 waiver. This waiver is a historic waiver because they are proposing to preserve in place the existing structure and garage in their entirety with no additional square footage added onto them. That's why they're requesting this waiver. And the waiver is from the requirement that all accessory structures from properties that have both a detached accessory structure and a secondary dwelling unit shall not exceed 60% of the total area of the primary building, including any attached structures having a roof. So the existing accessory garage structure is about 335 square feet. The existing structure is about 1592. And the proposed ADU is about 1,040 square feet. So that's about 87% of the floor area of the principal structure, and it does exceed the 1,000 square feet.
What about pervious and impervious?
It meets all of those requirements. It meets lot coverage, FAR, impervious, setbacks, all other zoning criteria. As far as the waiver criteria, we believe that it is in keeping with the general appearance and character of the neighborhood and district. 2-story accessory structures of this style are common, and it is in the same style as the existing house. The project is designed and arranged in a manner that minimizes oral and visual impact on properties while affording the owner reasonable use of the land. This allows the owner to preserve the existing historic building by granting the waiver. It allows them to not add any square footage onto the existing building while allowing them to also build additional square footage as part of this ADU to the rear. It does not have a substantial oral or visual impact on adjacent properties. It meets all required setbacks, and other similar rear structures do exist within close proximity to this site. Criteria C, the waiver or modification will not injure the area or otherwise be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. It meets this criteria. The waiver or modification is the minimum necessary to allow reasonable use of the property and while preserving its historical attributes. As I said before, the historic waivers are the minimum adjustment necessary to allow the proposed reasonable use of the accessory building and primary structure while maintaining their historic attributes and also allowing for the construction of a new accessory dwelling unit. The applicant could add on to these existing structures by right, but instead are proposing to completely construct a standalone ADU to minimize the impact on these existing historic structures. In conclusion, staff recommends approval with conditions as the proposal meets the waiver criteria requirements and the proposed new construction would not negatively impact the existing contributing structure. I can read off the conditions. You should have them in your staff report. The first condition is that this waiver would only apply to the construction of this particular ADU. Should any other structure on the property be destroyed, moved, or demolished, any other future development would need to comply to the current land development regulations. structure will have hardy cement siding in a thinner profile than the siding on the existing structure and have a smooth finish. The current accessory garage shall not at any point in the future be utilized as or converted to an accessory dwelling unit. If the existing garage is to count toward required parking, the unpermitted rear fence along the alley shall be removed so as allow access to the parking space in the garage. If the space is not to be used for required parking, as the applicant would have the required parking with the large RV space and 2 spaces below the new accessory unit, a permit for that fence shall be obtained. Additional fenestration shall be added to the ground floor of the west elevation to avoid the appearance of a blank wall. There is an area on the west elevation that does not have any architectural detailing, and it would be more appropriate as far as the rhythm of solids to voids and proportions of openings on the structure if additional fenestration were to be added there. All windows shall be impact rated single hung windows in a 1/1 configuration. All doors shall be impact rated full light French doors as shown on the plans. The standard window conditions that we apply to all projects, clear glazing, low E, no tint. Another condition would be the AC condenser that's shown on the site plan needs to be relocated to a location outside of the setbacks and shall not be visible from the primary facade. This is a zoning concern primarily. And that the proposed gravel parking material shall meet all requirements in the city's land development regulations. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I believe you should have hopefully have the motions in your packet. Otherwise,
Yeah, we're good.
uh,
Owners here,
Yeah, the applicant and the owner are on Zoom.
they'd like to say something.
That's a question.
Yeah.
Why is the only issue the 40 extra square feet?
no, so it's the 40 extra square feet and additionally, the 60% requirement. So the 40 extra square feet is not too substantial, but they're at 87% of the existing square footage, while including that existing accessory garage, which technically counts towards that 60%, rather than the required 60%.
I have 2 questions. In reviewing the packet, I see that in the staff report, it's talking about 1,040 feet. And then the memorandum from Jeffrey Bird Associates says 1,025 feet. What is it? Which one is it?
I think when the applicant is calculating their square footage, they're not including the cantilevered balcony as part of their square footage. That is also counted. So that's why I went with the 1,040 square feet.
That's a discrepancy.
Yes.
Is it within our purview to ask what the intent of the owner's use of the building would be? For instance, would it be like a Airbnb or family use? Is it within our purview to inquire about that?
So the owner wouldn't be allowed to use it as an Airbnb since those aren't allowed in Lake Worth Beach on the whole. As far as their use beyond that, I don't think it would be appropriate. Since they are technically allowed to have an ADU of some sort by right.
No, thank you.
Comment. Or do you want to hear the owners?
You can just
we can.
stop share there and then. So Billy and Jeffrey, if you guys have anything to add, the board, would like to give you some time to speak if you have anything to add to Anne's presentation.
Sure. Bill, I defer to you first, but I can say a few words if you don't have anything.
No, I don't have much to say. Just I've been in Lake Worth Beach for the last 5-ish years as a renter. Really happy to move in, and we're having a lot of fun with this property. And I've loved all the cottages. I will address the one question that was asked. I know I don't have to. My plan is to build this ADU. I have elderly parents that recently had their house destroyed in Hurricane Ian. We rebuilt it, and then it got destroyed again in Hurricane Milton this last month. So my plan is as they get a little older, I'm going to want them moving kind of closer to me. We've had them in town at 111 J Street renting for the last year and a half while we rebuilt the house, and they've loved walking to all the bars and restaurants, and they really love the town as well. So I'm looking to kind of bring my parents here. They may not be immediate because they kind of want to go back to Fort Myers, but I know in my dad's 78, my mother's 76. In the next couple of years, they're going to require moving closer to me. So I would rather have it available for them. I might rent it intermittently until then, and then if and when they pass, it would be a rental again, most likely is my plan. But other than that, I'll let Jeff speak about the actual building designs and any questions you guys have about the setup. I just really tried to build something that looks as much like it fits into town and matches my existing property, and we're really excited for it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, likewise. I've known Bill and his family for I think probably most of my life. Most of my life. We're both sort of had initially been from Chicago, but now Bill is down there, and I've spent a fair amount of time in Florida writ large. The building itself, yeah, I mean, objectively, we're trying to look and fit in, but not duplicate, in a tasteful manner, and being respectful of the existing house. It's a nice house. It's of a nice vintage. And trying to keep sort of in that scale of, 1 and 2 story things that exist kind of in and around the neighborhood. It's a great neighborhood. And, I would like to compliment the staff in particular that we've, been back and forth with. They've been extremely helpful and diligent in putting the reports together and kind of helping us, steer us in the right direction. So hats off to them. I've worked with a lot of towns, and, they did a great job. And any other questions, happy to take them. But we really appreciate your guys' time tonight.
Other questions? Well, thank you, gentlemen, on that one. Yeah, we did. You guys are good. We'll have a motion. All right.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve HRPB project number 24-001-00164 with staff recommended conditions, numbers 1 through 11 that were already read to us, for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a new accessory dwelling unit and 1 historic waiver to exceed the accessory structure size limitation at 406 North L Street, based upon the competent substantial evidence in the staff report and pursuant to the City of Lakewood Beach land development regulations and historic preservation requirements.
I have a motion. Do I have a second, please? All right, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're good.
Chair, if I just make a comment, I was listening to another board meeting this morning on my YouTube TV, and I could barely hear about half of it.
Okay,
I know there's probably some technical issues that may be afoot. One point Annie was really, really low, and then she was really, really high, and I didn't change the volume thing, so, but if I could just invite everybody to really
Make
speak
sure.
clearly into their microphones,
All right.
when we're speaking, I think that would help, the audience.
sure. Thank you.
I like to make, before we continue,
Sure.
Your mic on?
the ordinance you're gonna talk about tonight, they're all like, 150, maybe 160, 170 pages. I think it might be in our best interest if we could visualize and see it. So can we table this to get everything going? And you might wanna go over.
Which one are you talking about, Ed? I'm sorry. There's the mobility plan. Is that what you're speaking about, the multiple pages?
Yeah, I mean.
Well, they're not gonna read them all.
No?
No, they're just gonna basically tell you what we're doing to each ordinance and why we're changing them. And,
Yeah, there's no more
You know.
other,
and before I forget, let's recognize our city commissioner back there. Thank you for stopping in. Appreciate it. I guys wanna proceed with that. Yeah, they're not gonna read the whole, believe me. We have little explanations on each one of the changes.
Yeah, I think our plan was to just move forward. Obviously, unfortunately, the screens aren't working tonight, but
You could act them out.
the ordinances were, provided in the packet beforehand. I think,
Right.
yeah, it would, impact. Obviously other timelines in terms of getting things in front of the commission if we were to table things tonight.
We end up to next year.
So the ordinances in fact are based on our looking at the ordinances this evening and
Right,
the way it's spelled out.
correct.
Well, we talk from this proceed.
I think we're comfortable.
All right.
Take it away.
1 second. I am going to move one of the applicants from the previous one in the waiting room just so that he does not have to keep getting live streamed straight onto YouTube with his camera. All right. So since we switched items B and C, we are on ordinance 2024-17. I will let the city attorney
Okay.
read off the title.
Good evening. This is ordinance 2024-17, an ordinance of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending chapter 23 land development regulations, article 1 general provisions, division 2 definitions, section 23.1-12 definitions, article 2 administration, division 3 permits, section 23.2-3 temporary use permit, article 3 zoning districts, division 1 generally, section 23.3-6 use tables, in Division 5 Industrial Districts, Section 23.3-24 IPOC, Industrial Park of Commerce. Article 4 Development Standards, Section 23.4-10 Off-Street Parking. Section 23.4-13 Administrative Uses and Conditional Uses. And Section 23.4-23 Temporary Uses. And Article 5 Supplemental Regulations, Section 23.5-9 Public Purpose Dedication, and providing for severability, complex codification, and an effective date.
All right, so this ordinance would be establishing a manufacturing and processing facilities with apparatus use in our city's code. Right now we have manufacturing and processing facilities, but it doesn't capture certain types of uses that have additional apparatuses like certain recycling plants, concrete batch plants, things like that. So an applicant reached out to staff a few months ago, interested in developing an industrial property in the city for a concrete batch plant. And that's kind of where we realized the need to have regulations for this sort of use in the code. So this is kind of a comprehensive amendment to address a number of things, creating definitions for these types of uses, putting them on the use table, correcting some little things about sustainable bonus, and creating a system to accommodate the height of some of these apparatus structures through the existing sustainable bonus system that we use for anything that goes above 2 stories in the city. Making some standard dimensions for oversized vehicles, revising some minimum parking requirements for the industrial uses. We are still coordinating with the applicant to make sure that that requirement is realistic for an industrial use. We are also working on, or have created some design and performance standards. We've revised some existing ones and created some new ones. Things like considering distance to certain land uses like residential land uses or schools, particularly because the Lake Worth Middle School butts right up against one of our industrial areas, wanting to protect, the people using those. Also creating a temporary use category for these types of uses. So, for example, a concrete batch plant may need occasionally to work off hours if, let's say, FDOT has a big highway project that they need resurfacing and they're going to need to be batching and working overnight, So creating a system to allow certain amount of days, basically, where they can work outside of the standard hours, and a system to notify staff when they would do so. So that's kind of the big picture summary. In terms of impact to historic districts, it would have basically none, since none of our historic districts overlap with the Industrial Park of Commerce, which is the only area that these uses would be allowed. I believe, let's see, we do have a representative for the applicant here tonight as well, if you have any questions for them, or if you have any questions for staff.
So, since it doesn't impact the historic, well, tell me again why we're even
Yes.
discussing it?
Yep, so all land development regulations go to both you and the planning and zoning board, whether or not they impact historic districts specifically. You guys and the PZB jointly share the role in the city as the land planning agency, which is the group that ordinance changes like this have to go to before going to the city commission.
And yeah, okay, this is already been for planning.
Yes, the planning board unanimously voted to recommend that the city commission approve it with a change to the distance radius from residential, school, those sorts of land uses. They voted to recommend that that be changed to 375 feet instead of 400, and also changing it from use area to property line. They agreed with the applicant that they thought that would be a cleaner way to measure things, a more consistent way to measure things, while also achieving basically the same distance.
Same distance, you can take 25 feet. Okay.
Because you're going, yeah,
Right.
property line instead of use area.
But once again, we decided to call the planning board recommendation. That would be make everything in line.
Yeah, you guys can absolutely follow their recommendation. You can add more.
It doesn't apply to any of the historical.
No. So. They would recommend that we follow the planning board recommendation.
You can make that recommendation, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I have one thing. When reviewing this, I noticed that there were, as Annie alluded to, there were opportunities for a certain amount of days and a certain amount of hours to
Mhm.
to do, I guess you'd call it extra work, it's probably a better word for it, but extra work. And I recall it was up to 8 times a month and then 2 days for each allowance.
Mhm.
I'm not a math genius, but 8 times 2 is 16, which is half a month. So is it conceivable that they could be working extra hours for half of a month?
They could, if they were absolutely maximizing it out every month, theoretically, yes. Our impressions that we've gotten from the applicants describing how their business operates in other cities have not indicated that they would need that on a regular basis, but that it's kind of unpredictable of when those exactly come in. This amount was basically the maximum that we felt comfortable with giving without basically having to go back and reassess what standard operating hours should be at all for these sorts of uses. Yeah, so that was kind of the thought there.
Is it at all seasonal? Is there a pattern to their workload or they wouldn't be needed regularly, but maybe there's certain times a year that it would be needed?
Yeah, it's very project based, so you know, my understanding is that it's, related to, is there, a large high-rise development happening, which if that is tied to certain seasons down here, that wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, they seem to indicate that it was more project-based than seasonal.
And the type, Mr. Chair, the applicant is here, I believe, correct?
Their representatives, yeah.
So, I mean, it'd be good to hear from them. And then my curiosity is, what sorts of work would be done? And I know that you, in the packet, and also you, Annie, also mentioned the types of work would be done. I'd like to hear more about that.
Sure, yeah, I mean, the applicant is specifically a concrete batch plant, but this would cover more. So yeah, they'll really only be able to, I think, mostly speak to the concrete batch plant type.
Yep, give us a few words on it.
Good evening. My name is Bradley Miller. I'm with Urban Design Studio in 610 Clematis Street in West Palm Beach and representing the forthcoming applicant. This was a joint effort working with staff on coming up with the ordinance because this particular use wasn't really allowed in the code at all. even though there's CMEX is already there, but they've been there for so long, they're just grandfathered in. So that's where these regulations are coming from, and then we'll have a forthcoming formal application specific for the site. So this covers all of IPOC area. To address the question about the timing, and Andy addressed it correctly. There's, I think maybe a better example might be a roadway project, where they need concrete for a roadway project, and a lot of those are done in nighttime hours because there's less traffic. So in situations like that, we're working on the process of how we notify the staff of we need to run some trucks through the night type of thing. But again, I agree. I don't think it's gonna be that consistent thing. It's just, we don't know. So we're putting it in and had a great progress working with staff on getting to this point, and we agreed to, let's get it in there, get it working, get it going, and then we can adjust as we need to as we go on. Thank you.
Yes. Can't hear you.
You wait my turn. Hold on.
CMIX does the same thing on the seventh.
Right,
They run.
right. They don't have an ordinance in place. That's what they're saying. So now they're making an ordinance for that site. All right.
And our property actually is very close to CMEX. It's right at the end of Barnett and Seventh.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, based on ordinance 24-7, based on DBA planning board recommendation,
Mhm.
I like to make a motion that historical follow the same criteria.
So you move to recommend to the city commission to adopt the proposed LVR text amendments.
I second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I want to make sure that the motion is that you're recommending with the changes made by the planning and zoning, recommended by the planning and zoning board.
yes. Okay, a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so now we'll go back to ordinance 2024-14.
Ordinance 2024-14, an ordinance of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending chapter 23 land development regulations, article 1 general provisions, division 2 definitions, section 23.1-12 definitions, and article 6 environmental regulations, section 23.6-1 landscape regulations related to artificial turf, and providing for severability, complex codification, and an effective date.
All right, so surprise to no one, artificial turf has been a conversation for a while in the city. So the latest special city commission meeting back in May, staff direction was to come back with options regarding turf as it related to impermeable surfaces and clarifying the landscape code for residential and commercial properties. So this proposed ordinance would allow for artificial turf in the city with specific requirements about location, quality, and installation. So as written, the proposed ordinance would allow for artificial turf on athletic fields and playgrounds, single-family and two-family properties in rear and side yards, or in limited use as like a decorative material between things like pavers, strips like that in a driveway, on rooftop terraces, or in multifamily and mixed-use residential developments as part of recreation and amenity areas. This ordinance, as written, does consider artificial turf to be treated as an impervious surface and limits the amount of artificial turf based on that impermeable surface allowance. So no more than 10% of the allowed impermeable surface area may be artificial turf. It also has minimum material standards, installation, maintenance, and repair standards. A permit would be required for installation with associated inspections. The Planning and Zoning Board did unanimously recommend approval with revisions to consider artificial turf pervious but not living landscape.
Say that last sentence again.
Sure, yeah, so the Planning and Zoning Board didn't feel that artificial turf should be considered an impervious material. They felt that it should be considered pervious, but still limited as it is not a living landscape material.
I was gonna ask that question.
I have a question about the sentence that is artificial turf shall be prohibited in front yards except for the decorative bridge, patio, that, parking strips. We have a lot of homes in our area that have the house is very set back and there's hardly a backyard at all. So really their front yard is their recreational space. How would you,
Yeah,
see that?
so for the purposes of this, we would treat it the same as we do for our front yard landscaping requirement, where we consistently consider, for that requirement, we consistently consider the front yard to be the first 20 feet of from the street, basically, where the minimum required setback would be. So they would be treated the same as anyone else for that requirement, just like they are for the front yard impermeable and landscape area requirement that already exists.
So you're saying that 20 feet from the
Front
sidewalk,
property
from
line.
the property line at the front,
Mhm,
going back is considered a legit front yard.
correct.
So if your front yard were 40 feet, you could technically have artificial turf beyond the first 20 feet.
Correct.
Okay, got it. That would be very confusing to people.
Well, it would fall into situations where we're putting swimming pools in front yards. Not all properties are the
I mean,
same.
if somebody is trying to figure out what they can do, are they gonna be able to understand that reading it?
Well, it's gonna require a permit, so,
Yeah.
I mean, says here, yeah, so it's like with anything, it's like windows, you have to find out what you can do before you do it.
We do with fences, where you think like you wanna have a 6 foot high fence, that's the within the setback.
So question from my neighbors is, why is it that playground, let me see, non-city owned athletic fields, are city owned athletic fields allowed to have them?
My understanding was that, and I was not at this commission meeting, so this is just from me watching it back, was that the commission wanted to consider how we're going to treat city properties separately. And maybe even hold it to some higher standard of Florida friendly landscape and all of that. So that's why this was focused on non-city owned.
So,
So the question is, why can't people follow the guidelines where it's going to be less costly to them, not have to water, not have to do bug control?
Have they ever priced it out? It is
Oh,
like
it's not my.
majorly expensive to put that in your yard.
In the long term? though?
Yeah, but once
Yeah.
you put it in,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have to maintain it just like a regular
yeah,
lawn.
I don't know, if there's been a study done on like a 10-year period, I would think it would be cost effective. Yeah, we don't know.
How long does the artificial turf typically last before it starts to dry
Have
out?
to be replaced. and all that.
Oxidize or?
That is a great question. I do not know off the top of my head.
You have,
But I don't really think it's up to us to say how.
no,
somebody
it's
should
up
spend
to
their
us
money or
to
whatever, you know.
recommend it to go back to the,
Yeah.
commission, so get the apple. I'm actually really interested.
Well, I would tend to object that I think we are here to
Okay, so
give guidelines about how people. And
How
I've got a lot of
many
things to say on this, Mr. Chair, by the way.
they use it on golf courses, yes? They do that at the green?
Of course.
Artificial turf.
Of course.
Okay, how many times do they replace that? Quite often.
yeah, but,
I don't know.
Yeah, but they're putting on it and chipping it up.
but
Walking on it.
UV.
It's not plastic.
I got,
Anyways, we don't have the facts to
Right.
debate how,
No.
what,
but I have to tell you.
No.
Michael Rubin, he did a field down in Sunrise. And our Lakewood kids down that that field. And that field is still today, he put his on Oxford Street. And if there's an NFL player comes to town, which we get, the league should be getting money, the Dolphins. And they want to do it out of church for 6th Avenue. We'll be very foolish to turn that down.
Okay, so how long would, I mean, it's,
It-
you're
so-
telling me
so
that field lasts a
That
long
field, we
time?
look at, and that was done about 12 years ago.
Okay.
That's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about the resident, we're talking about the historic.
So, I made that reference to how long
How
it
long
lasts,
church lasts?
and it's cost effective.
Well, there's different types of turf. There's different types of turf. There's permeable, non-permeable. I would tend to disagree with the P and Z's contention that all artificial turf is pervious, which isn't true. I don't know what scientific method they use to come up with that, or is it just, speculation? I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I have a lot of concerns about this artificial turf in our city and our historic districts. And I don't really understand why the city is not, or our board is not following the recommendations of the Tree and Landscape Board that has recommended against artificial turf in the city. If we look at the historic guidelines, the design guidelines, it doesn't say anything about, it just talks about native plants, ground covers, and this really flies in the face of all the historic design guidelines in the city. I'm also concerned about how it's going to be monitored, how it's going to be the current artificial turf. Is that in compliance or not? Who's going to decide that? Who's going to monitor and make sure that it's maintained properly?
I think that's an issue with anything, unfortunately. It's an issue when people put in windows without a permit.
But windows are windows. Windows stay forever. This is
Putting up a fence,
Right,
but it's too tall. I mean, that's an issue with anything.
Just regular property maintenance. Again, it's not in the front yard, and that's why I think they were
Right,
putting on.
it's in the back.
Out of view.
Well, no, it's talking about strips in the driveway.
Right.
Well, if we
that's
keep
not
the
accurate.
10% if we keep the 10% guideline in, then it's not going to be prevalent. Well, can you tell us why the tree board voted unanimously not to approve it?
So the
What
tree
were the
board
reasons?
has not yet seen this rendition of it. I believe there was previously a turf ordinance brought a few years ago, maybe. But the Tree and Landscape Board will see this version of it at their meeting tomorrow night. So they've not yet voted on this version. I don't think we anticipate that they'll support it since they're generally pro living landscape, but that's
Well, you don't have to support it. This is just a recommendation. You could say we don't recommend it to,
Right, I don't recommend it.
But I don't agree either with this, zoning board recommendation that it would be considered permeable. And many of the installations that I've seen have impermeable materials underneath it so that the weeds won't grow through that material, and that's very typical. So I would not go along with that. And the thing that concerns me is environmentally, sooner or later, it ends up in a landfill. That's something that we should.
I think we have to counteract that against pesticide use, which is the worst of, which is worse. We don't know. I mean, we don't have those facts in front of us. We haven't looked at the studies or really know. It's difficult when we have to make these decisions and we don't have that information. So, we're not scientists. We're not,
I would say this. I know we're not voting, no, we're not doing well. But the youth is there.
And I can't even hear you. So I can't-
I would say this. I know we're not voicing Delray, both they're using it. And what's happening is, this is what's coming based on water shortage, number one. Based on pesticides, number two. Based on short square footage, number three. It's based on a lot of things, and don't be concerned about it. The maintenance of it all. Because when you install it, the application, the installation is the most important part of compaction. And also, you have pervious for drainage. Now, the way things are going now, with people worrying about pervious, people, the planning, well, building department decided to get people put in drainage, make sure they can maintain the water hindrance, the actual French drain. And under that artificial turf, it's French. All I've seen so far, applications down south. So I think I gave the speech. Earlier, you're talking about FEMA, so you're talking about the height of a building. This is the way we're moving forward in the new world of construction. We have to get on board here because we can't put in an artificial turf is what's coming. And whether Freeborn or who, they haven't even seen it, like she said. And like you said.
I'm not sure that's accurate,
But she said it, they haven't seen it, they haven't seen this here, I meant.
They've not seen this version. Like I said, I think there was one a few years ago that they did see and didn't recommend approval of, but this version is going to them tomorrow night.
What is the current ruling on artificial? Or non, what is it now?
Generally, artificial turf is not allowed in the city right now.
Anyway,
Point.
but there are people that have it, and they probably didn't install whatever this version of it is that the staff of the city is recommending, that all the people that currently have artificial turf, they're getting fined. There's a lot of issues around this, which I think, is the genesis of this, this ordinance is people were complaining that they were getting fined for artificial turf. But what kind of artificial turf do those folks have? Are they gonna have to now be reviewed by the city to come and say, hey, your artificial turf is permeable or not permeable, you've been maintaining or not maintaining it? I mean, it just opens up a whole can of worms, in addition to the environmental concerns that I have about it. So I think like the whole sort of oversight of it is gonna be a lot of work for the city. Not that that should be a deciding factor, but in order to, who's gonna be, going into, Mrs. Jones's yard in a year or two and see whether or not it's been, maintained, or if it's up, or if it's not up, or it's, draining or not draining. I mean, I think this is kind of caving into a small percentage of the city. I don't know what are percentages of the people in the city that have artificial turf. I don't know if they're just like a bunch of folks that are just very, very noisy and loud about this, and, or there's gonna be a lot more people who are gonna have artificial turf as a result of this, but I think there's a lot of implications in this that we really need to consider when we're making recommendations to the commission.
I think this does give you guidelines though, because otherwise people are gonna do it without any guide. People are doing it and they're going to keep doing it. They're gonna do it in their backyards where you're not gonna notice it. So this at least gives you guidelines.
Right.
Does this say that you need to have a permit?
Yes.
Yes.
Put
Yes.
artificial turf anywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
What about the
All right, wait.
existing, what about the existing people with the artificial turf?
Well, I don't think we have the resources to go and release that. Unfortunately,
That'd be true of those,
Yeah,
you got the wrong windows in.
right, the fences, look at fence heights.
I would say this in my last argument for artificial turf. The leaves, the grass, you see the guy out there blowing it in the drain. And you do you think that there's the leaves in the grass, deteriorating, forbidden? No, it's stopping it by drainage system. You wonder why we have 3 and 4 feet of, 2 and 3 feet of water at one time. Wonder why the water
Right on
can't
that
drain.
street, yeah.
You see, I'm gonna tell you, all of this have been considered in the cities down south. We need to get, look, I'm gonna tell you this one, we need to get on board with what's coming. We can't make excuses. And I'm gonna say this,
Shall we
I
table it
know,
for a vote?
I know some of us, we like green space. I like green space, I preach green space mitigation. But you cannot shut down what's benefit and useful for the environment.
I think these are reasonable guidelines considering what I'm seeing.
I have one more point, if I could make one more point, Mr. Chair. My question was, is there a 1 foot setback enough to avoid leaching into the city sewers when flooding occurs? That's a concern that I have. 1 foot setback seems not enough.
The 1 foot setback is the standard that we have right now in terms of where impermeable surfaces can start. It's mostly as it relates to impermeable surfaces right now, trying to avoid, water runoff right onto your neighbor's property. I don't know that we've
What is,
looked into any sort of leaching.
can I ask, what is mulch considered to be? Is it
So
impermeable or permeable?
mulch is most often part of a living landscape bed. So it's permeable.
Even though they have the plastic stuff underneath? Right, that's oftentimes how they install mulch. They put the plastic underneath and the mulch on top because like you said, they don't want the weeds to come through. So that's very similar to turf, which is plastic on the bottom, usually with holes, so the weeds don't come through. So I don't know how is mulch that much different.
At least be a little more respectful of each other, talking over each other. Thank you. Now, as far as existing, I know within the last 6 months to a year, 1, 2, 3, 4 properties between 10th and Lake Avenue, just Ocean Breeze, had them removed because they were told to by the municipality.
They were in the front.
And they were in their front yards. Not cheap. Going in or going out. So I'm just saying.
Some of these were the entire front yard.
Yes,
So that I would not
yes,
support.
yes. Okay, anybody in the audience would like to say anything? Okay, then, do we get a recommendation? Or not?
Go and say, I vote to not recommend to the city commission to adopt the proposed LDR text amendments, including ordinance 2024-14.
Okay, we have a not. Do we have a second on the not? We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. 3 and 3.
So, but my question is,
We're done now.
oh, so what does that mean? What do we do?
You can continue
Well,
on.
this is just a recommendation.
So your motion fails.
Right.
So if somebody would like to make a substitute motion,
There you go.
do that now.
What would that be like? What's a
It's
substitute?
the opposite of what you did.
Oh,
It's not technically a substitute motion, but another motion because that one failed. Would you like to make a different motion?
okay, so I could make a motion to recommend?
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion to recommend to the city commission to adopt the proposed LDR text amendments included in ordinance 2024-14.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
I don't think I.
Nay.
But I oppose for opposite reasons. I think they should be allowed to use it if it's
Use it.
wherever they want to use it. Well,
Then you're
Then-
getting into
then
the
you should-
historic aspect of it, what you're seeing from the street. You know, I always look at the historic district as, did this exist in 1920? Or did this exist in 1980?
I know, but we also did have the climate issues we have now, that we had
I
that.
understand that, but we also have wood chips and xeriscape and other things that could be utilized.
So you're actually in favor of it, and you
In
think
favor
this
of it.
doesn't go far enough? Kinda. Well, then you should
It's gonna be A.
propose, because, I mean, this is a start.
We can
Nothing
note,
at all.
we can note in our staff report to the city commission that the two
It just got out of-
opposing votes were for opposite reasons.
All right.
Okay,
Well, are we also?
So it will still provide basically in our staff report to the city commission, we'll say 4-2 voted to recommend that the city commission adopt. The 2 opposing votes, one was against the use of artificial turf in general in the city, the other was more interested in a broader allowance of artificial turf.
It was a heated
3,
discussion.
sorry.
It was heated.
Madam Attorney, I don't understand why, a motion that is, voted on 3-3 is not counted.
Tie votes are counted as failed votes.
So if we split the board about our recommendations, that would not carry any kind of weight?
That's typically why we like to have odd numbers on board. So you don't end up in this quandary, because, yeah, anytime there's a tie on a vote, the motion is considered to have failed.
Want to vote again?
we did that already.
All right, so we're good there. Moving on.
You've done all you can.
Are we doing this one about the pool? But I was gonna mention that, I made you laugh.
Figure it all out, just sit back.
2418.
Yes.
All right, moving on to ordinance 2024-18, an ordinance of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending chapter 23 land development regulations. Article 1, general provisions, division 2 definitions, section 23.1-12 definitions. Article 3, zoning districts, division 1 generally, section 23.3-6 use tables. And division 3 mixed use districts, section 23.3-17 MUDH, mixed use Dixie Highway, and providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
All right, so this is sort of like a mini version of the ones that you see more often in the fall and spring. This is what we're calling our winter round, kind of a conglomeration of little things that we've picked up through practice and noticed that needed to be revised. So the definitions, revising the definition of townhouse to allow for the development of 2-unit townhouses. This is something that we've had some interest in, small development of 2-unit townhouses, 1 or 2 that may be even coming to you from the historic districts. But our current definition didn't allow for it. It allowed for duplexes, but that wouldn't allow for separate owners of each of the units. One would have to be the owner and then one would rent from them. So this would allow for that sort of development, and we are removing the definition of townhouse complex. That is something that was carried over from an old version of the code and no longer is necessary. So we're cutting that. The use table, through working on some conceptual plans with an existing assisted living center, it came to our attention that assisted living centers and facilities and nursing homes and nursing facilities were listed throughout the code in both residential and institutional use types. So we are consolidating that, moving the nursing home and assisted living facility uses just to institutional, and also creating a high intensity use type to allow for those uses greater than 7,500 square feet. And then in terms of the MUDH, we are revising the minimum lot width and lot area for parcels on the west side of Dixie Highway. So when the code was totally redone back in 2013, there was kind of a hope and a vision that the west side of Dixie Highway would have parcels combined together, unified, and large developments, things like the Mid or Deco Green would be going there. We've gotten a few of those, but for the most part, the west side of Dixie Highway still has lots of smaller parcels, smaller neighborhoods, smaller developments. So now that we're 11 years past that, and that sort of vision for that area hasn't really panned out, the greater parcel area and parcel width requirement has been a stumbling block for smaller developments. So we're revising it to be consistent with the requirements for the parcels on the east side of Dixie Highway and making a small correction for the density. The Planning and Zoning Board did recommend unanimously that the City Commission adopt these changes with an additional change, a similar use type to the nursing home and assisted living facilities that is not currently in the draft ordinance, a retirement home. They recommended that we change that language to independent senior living to better reflect current verbiage.
That makes sense. All right, guys, any discussion on that, please? Dr. Lisa Leon.
Hi, Amy Mahalik. I'm at 2032 Collier Avenue. I do not support the change in definition of townhouses to include 2 units. Earlier this year, there was an ordinance brought forth to allow townhouses within single-family residential zoning districts. I'm sure you remember, there was a lot of people here, and it was the citizens of Lake Worth Beach overwhelmingly were against that. So currently, townhouses within single-family zoning is not permitted. If this definition change goes through, would townhouses fall under 2-family dwelling designation? As well, because that currently is permitted by right within single family zoning. So it kind of seems like this is a way to potentially go against the voice of the people and to get townhouses into single family zoning. And if so, it should be posted more clearly so that the neighborhoods can show up, enforce again. and not just hide it in the agenda as a housekeeping item. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this does not allow two-family residential uses in single-family residential zoning districts. Those aren't allowed currently. They wouldn't be allowed under this. Could a two-unit townhouse go into a single-family, two-family zoning district? Yes, just like a duplex or a single-family house with an ADU could. This does not change SFR.
I think you're not changing, sorry, you're not changing the zoning, you're just changing what it's called.
We're changing the definition to allow for a smaller townhouse development. Right now, they would need a minimum of 3 units. This would allow for a townhouse.
So
of
right
2.
now, we have a definition for a townhouse complex. Right now, right?
We have a townhouse and a townhouse complex.
Okay, a
definition.
townhouse is
A townhouse,
one family?
so, oh, you guys can't see it if I pull it up now, can you? Darn. So basically, the townhouse complex was a definition that was meant to be more for projects that would have it was kind of differentiating between projects that would have multiple townhouse structures on them. The townhouse definition right now is a structure with 3 to, I believe it's 6 units within it. A townhouse development can have 1 or more townhouse structures. This would allow for the development of anything from 1 singular structure with 2 units up to, multiple structures with 6 units in each structure if you've got a really large parcel that could fit that.
Within a multiple unit zoning district, not in a single.
Exactly. This would still
this
not
would
allow,
Allow townhouse structures in single family home zoning.
exactly, because
Okay, so
a
that
single
would not-
townhouse would just be a
right.
single
Is
family
that
home.
your concern? Right, so we just want to alleviate your concern that this would not change that. Okay.
Anyone else?
I guess I'm still a little bit confused about the difference between a two-family. The difference between a two-family structure and a two-family townhouse, 2-unit townhouse. What's the difference?
So, yeah, it's mostly about individual owners and individual parcels. So, if you have a duplex or a house in an ADU, that's on 1 parcel with 1 owner, and then one of the 2 people is renting out their living space.
Duplexes always have one owner?
One over.
So then a townhouse, basically a 2-unit townhouse would be, you each have your own parcel within that, your fee simple lot. Exactly, and
Property is split in half, not just, we don't just own the building,
Mhm.
like similar to a condominium,
mhm,
but you own half of the property.
yeah, and then there's usually a party wall agreement, yeah, and then each person owns their own residence.
I think there's one on the corner, like 16, where the federal is just like 3 little townhouses right there on the corner. One of those north end. The open building in the front. But you don't even notice it, it's 3 little townhouses. Looks like 1 building, but it's not.
I guess what's already great problem is great problem.
So if that one has 3 units, that was already allowed.
Right.
The
Oh,
example
sorry,
that Bob
but
was
I'm just
giving,
saying.
yeah,
Similar situation, but you would allow 2,
yes.
okay. You get a recommendation on this, please?
I move to recommend to the city commission to adopt the proposed LDR text amendments included in ordinance 2024-18. Second,
Do you
I have a
want to,
motion and a second.
do you want to include the recommended change that planning and zoning recommended with the assisted living?
yeah, what did they recommend?
They recommended that we change the reference to retirement home uses to independent senior
Oh,
living.
yes, we do recommend that as well, thank you. Yeah.
I have an amended motion. I have an amended second. Okay. There. There.
Now, these here, I don't have assisted living, what you call them?
Senior living.
Senior living, they just can't go properly very quick.
They're just changing the name.
Yeah.
We could change the name.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, first step. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, no one opposed.
All right, 2024-19, an ordinance of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending the future land use element, transportation element, housing and neighborhoods element, capital improvements element, and economic development element of the city's comprehensive plan, adopting the city of Lake Worth Beach's mobility plan, and providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and effective date.
All right, so we're almost there, everyone. We've got the city's mobility plan that we've been collaborating with WGI to develop. The plan is intended to serve both as a mobility plan and a safety action plan, and to provide information regarding prioritization for future mobility related projects in the city. So the mobility plan is all about analyzing how people and goods move throughout a community, and the safety action plan is prioritizing safety improvements and justification for each project. The safety action plan portion of it is important because it opens us up for certain types of funding for safety improvement projects. So the new mobility plan is going to be presented to the City Commission. We had in your staff report that it was going to be December 3rd. That has been moved to the regular meeting on the 17th. Basically, the draft mobility plan could be adopted by the City Commission by resolution, which would not have come to you guys. But one of the recommendations in the appendix or the appendices of the mobility plan were a series of comprehensive plan amendments to better align various plans that the city has. So we figured it'd be smoother to just bring this all at once, since that has to go to the City Commission anyways. So there are 5 elements that this would be amending, and generally, like I said, it's strengthening ties between this plan, the Vision Zero ordinance, the Complete Streets policy, the capital improvement plan, and the comprehensive plan. Adding language to support investments into mobility and improvements to infrastructure, using and referencing state, national, and internationally recognized standards for multimodal street design, and adding language throughout to emphasize the importance of safety as well as efficiency in mobility and traffic improvement planning. So again, these are comprehensive plan amendments. So this is not our usual LDRs that we see. This goes through a larger state process. It'll go to the City Commission for first reading and transmittal. At that point, staff will transmit the proposed amendments to a variety of state reviewing agencies. They'll have the opportunity to comment before it comes back to City Commission for second reading early next year. And then it'll go back to the state one more time, because this is all a great complicated process that we have in our statutes. So this is a little bit of a broader scale than the normal LDRs that we have.
So we don't know what the elements are going to be modified. We're just determining if you should go forward and consider this, right?
The draft text for the modifications is in the ordinance. But yes, technically, before second reading at City Commission, there could be changes, if recommended by state reviewing agencies.
I just want to say that I reviewed, most of the 1,016 pages of this mobility plan. I speed read it. And I just want to say, I think they did a tremendous job on this. A lot of work. I participated in actually one of the surveys in it online. I know they were doing it at the street painting festival. I mean, they really reached out to the community about this. And it's very, very well done. I like everything about, alternative transportation besides people just driving around. And I want to acknowledge that this is very excellent work by the city.
Read the recommendation then.
Oh, all right. I will. I would like to make a motion that the staff I move to recommend the City Commission to adopt the proposed comprehensive plan text amendments, including ordinance 2024-19.
Motion, do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. I lost the cord.
Last one, you guys are on a roll. Ordinance number 2024-20 of the city of Lake Worth Beach, Florida, amending chapter 23 land development regulations, amending article 1 general provisions, division 2 definitions, section 23.1-12 definitions, and article 5 supplemental regulations, section 23.5-10 medical marijuana treatment center dispensing facilities prohibited, to prohibit medical and non-medical marijuana dispensing facilities and related uses within the boundaries of the city, providing for legislative findings, providing for codification, a moratorium contingency, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
All right, so
Go ahead.
as we all know, recently there was a proposed constitutional amendment, Amendment 3, that would have potentially allowed for recreational, non-medical, personal consumption of marijuana. This was kind of born in response to that. Obviously, we all now know that that amendment did not pass. And correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, I believe it was at a pre-meeting workshop or from the city commission. There was interest from commissioners in bringing forward an ordinance banning marijuana dispensing facilities within the city. So back in 2018, the city commission voted to ban medical marijuana treatment dispensing facilities in the city. And this ordinance as written would treat medical and non-medical dispensing facilities equivalently and would ban them both. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended unanimously that the City Commission not adopt the proposed ordinance. And we did also want to acknowledge that we received some public comment about language in the staff report and in the whereas clauses of the ordinance about impacts of dispensary uses. Basically public feedback that some language in there was offensive that was brought into this ordinance from the 2018 ordinance. We didn't have time to amend any of that prior to bringing it to you. By the time we got that comment, this was already published online, but this will be slightly amended when it is brought to the City Commission to reflect that feedback that we've gotten.
Do we not have existing marijuana facilities in our municipality?
There are 2 that were existing prior to the 2018 ban. And so those were allowed to continue.
Oh, so you can allow them to continue, but to everybody else they can't, is what we're.
Yeah, no new ones could be established.
I think it's also important to note that while the ordinance did not pass the vote, because it needed 60%, but it was over 50%.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's hear from the gang on this one.
Well, I'm just wondering, given the defeat of the amendment, that what changes with this? Anything at all? With the ordinance?
Not really. The city commission requested we bring this forward. We're bringing it forward. You can recommend whether they, if you would like them to consider it or not.
Okay, then
What happens to existing?
they stay.
There
Existing
two that are
Okay.
existing would still be existing. There are no additional medical marijuana dispensing facilities that are permitted in the city based on the 2018 code. That would remain in place regardless. This is really to address non-medical, which at this point isn't really an issue because the constitutional amendment
Right.
did
So it's
pass.
kind of a moot point. So to not waste time, I would vote to not recommend that you adopt this proposed LDR text amendment included in ordinance 2024-20 because it's kind of a waste of time to
Right.
review it, in my opinion.
So we have a kind of motion. Do we have a kind of second?
I'll second that.
All right, all those kind of in favor?
Aye.
All right, that's unanimous. We do.
I think we're over.
All right, any staff stuff, please?
We do have one department report, but let's see, if we wanted to do general public comments before that, just to follow the,
Yeah, I mean.
Do we
any
have
public
anyone?
Comments on anything? We're good? Okay, go ahead, Annie.
awesome. All right, so our department report, unfortunately, again, you guys aren't going to be able to see the photos, but It is a notice of condemnation and future demolition for the structure at 126 South J Street. This is in the Southeast Lucerne Local Historic District. It is a property that the CRA has acquired. I would try to describe what you'd see from the street, but it's one of those properties that's so far back that really what you can see from the street is vegetation. Yeah, it's just north of Second Avenue South and South J Street, 3 properties in. So this is a circa 1925 frame vernacular 2-family residence. It's currently vacant. It was condemned by the building official. The letter was sent today. He did a site visit back in July. The CRA also had an independent inspection done of the existing property. It has decay, a lot of rot. There was a fire. There was some unpermitted work that removed some load-bearing walls.
They started renovation, the prior owner started renovation on that property, then it sat boarded up.
Yeah, and it's not been maintained while it's been boarded up. So a lot of active wet areas and everything. So per this LDRs and the COA approval matrix, demolition of a condemned contributing structure within a non-national registered district requires board notice and opportunity for you all to comment, but it does not require your approval. So
All right.
this is your notice and opportunity to comment.
Address again.
126 South J Street.
Once you see, you'll know.
If I saw it, I know if I live on South Bay.
It's a 2-story with a big front porch, like a front gable, way to the back of the property, like basically on the alley.
That's this thing.
Yeah,
Okay. We good?
that is all I had.
Whatever happened to that property I right off the street? The tree growing.
That property they have not moved forward with their pre-demolition release forms or a demolition permit application. I spoke to a potential contractor for the owner for a demolition company. We spoke about preserving the trees and protecting those. So I don't know if they were the contractor that was chosen. They were bidding for it. But it was made clear to them that the trees would need to be maintained. We are in the interim of getting a new city horticulturalist now that Dave is now with the Norton Museum of Art. So yes, very exciting for him, very sad for us. But we are working with consultants to provide arborist services in the interim. So should they move forward with their plan for demolition, we would work with them to create a tree protection plan.
And that is the
523 South M Street.
yeah, the 2-story Spanish that's been
Yes.
installed.
Yeah.
I was in that about
Where Mr.
25 years ago.
Where Mr. McGee?
The Norton Museum. Norton?
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, we're good. Chair. Good. I'm gonna do it. All right.